John Ronson is a writer and documentary filmmaker. His books, Them, Adventures with Extremist, I'm in that one, and The Men Who Stare at Goats were international bestsellers. The Men Who Stare at Goats have been turned into major motion pictures starring George Clooney, Ewan McGregor, Kevin Spacey, Jeff Bridges. He also is the author of 2 collections, Out of the Ordinary, True Tales and Everyday Craziness, and What I Do, More True Tales of Everyday Crazies. He's written the popular Human Zoo and Out of the Ordinary columns for The Guardian, where he still contributes features. He currently writes and presents to Sony-nominated BBC Radio 4 series John Ronson On. And he also produced Secret Rulers of the World, a multi-award-winning documentary, 5-part documentary that I'm also in. And his most recent documentaries are Revered Death, Channel 4, Citizen Kubrick, and Robbie Williams and John Ronson, Journey to the Other Side, Radio 4. In the U.S., he is the contributor to Public Radio International's This American Life, johnronson.com. John Ronson joining us via Skype for PrisonPlanet.tv viewers. It's good to have you here, John.
Hey, Alex, it's good to hear from you again.
Where are you joining us from?
I'm joining you from London. I'm a bit trepidatious about this interview because I'm always worried about where it's going to go. But it's great to hear from you again. You know, we had this amazing adventure. When was it? Back in the year 2000, where we snuck into Bohemian Grove together.
Yes. And then I wasn't supposed to talk about how you later went in there for liability purposes. And then people asked me later, well, why is John Ronson saying he also snuck in? So they thought that, but I guess that's a journalistic issue of you guys snuck in later that day, that evening after I went in, and then I wasn't supposed to talk about that. And then later you did talk about that, and that became quite a big a question out there for people.
Yeah, no, I was worried at the time, speaking completely frankly, that if I admitted that I snuck in and trespassed, we might have trouble getting our documentary on television because of the way that we, went about gathering the material. So I just kind of kept quiet about it. But then when my book came out, when Them came out, I did admit going in. But of course, to this day, there's loads of people who think that I didn't go into Bohemian Grove and I faked the whole thing, including people on Prison Planet, on the forum and so on.
Well, don't feel bad, John, because people think A, didn't sneak in, or B, that they let us in. But no, we did indeed. I separately snuck in. Then later that day, you reportedly snuck in there. And
right.
I did see it about 100 yards away and wave at you.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we walked past each other when we were surrounded by all that kind of strange, devilly iconography and all those kind of, owl sculptures. And we walked past each other basically, just keep walking, just keep walking. It was a mad night. I still look back on that as being probably the strangest night of my life and one of the most enjoyable.
Well, I think one of the big issues here is folks can't believe that I was able to sneak in and shoot that footage that you use in your television program because so many other people got caught, got busted. But every time you read about a CBS News reporter or a People magazine reporter or Vanity Fair, they walk up to people and start asking reporter questions. What do they think's going to happen?
There is a weirdness, though, to us getting in because we both knew that in the days preceding our arrival, there were kind of FBI guys all over the local town and so on. But by the time we arrived, they'd all cleaned out. And we just walked in very easily. I walked up the drive, giving the security guard a kind of I rule the world wave, wearing preppy clothes. And you went in through the undergrowth, but we both got in incredibly easily. My guess is that these days, since your documentary and my book and documentary, it's going to be a lot harder to get into Bohemian Grove. But, maybe we spoiled the party for any other.
I believe we have. In fact, they've reported that the security is out the wazoo now. John Ronson, stay with us. John Ronson is our guest, documentary filmmaker, worldwide best-selling author. Both of his best-selling books got optioned to make films. One of them, Men Who Stare at Goats, is now in theaters. One of the #1 movies out there in the world. It's in the top 3. The second book, the first in the series, Them, that I'm a big part of, got optioned to be turned into a movie, and that's probably still going to happen. We will talk to John Ronson about that before he leaves us. But for stations that just joined us on the radio, he's also simulcasting at prisonplanet.tv. For the viewers joining us from London, during the break we were talking about Bohemian Grove. He's getting interviewed for Jesse Ventura's TV show, one of the last interviews they're doing on Skull and Bones, on Bohemian Grove, on Bilderberg, because he has a differing view than I do, but not that big of a view change.
The thing we really agree on is, I thought what I saw was kind of stupid, and you thought what we saw inside Bohemian Grove was, proof of Satanism and so on, and I didn't. But what we agree on is that the participants in the ritual at Bohemian Grove seem to take it really seriously, and that's a really interesting question.
Yes, you were there in the crowd as they were engaging in the mock human sacrifice, the effigy of a boy. And, I mean, were the old men not grinding their teeth and making sexual pleasure noises? Were they not in a raptured state?
Well, they did seem to. I don't know if I'd use those exact words. I didn't think kind of sexual pleasure or so on, but they did seem to be, like, really into it, like really intense about it. And you noticed that, and I noticed that. And it was strange, and I came away thinking, frankly, that I was the most sane person in the entire redwood forest, because I didn't agree with you and Mike's interpretation of the ceremony, but also I could see that, the participants were taking it just as seriously as you were, and I did find that very odd. And in fact, that was the kind of germ of the idea, this idea of kind of bubbles of craziness at the heart of power that eventually led on to me writing The Monasteric Goats. Really the Monasteric Goats was kind of began to form in my mind that night when we were at Bohemian Grove.
Well, I mean, from meeting you out at Waco more than 10 years ago to today, I've seen you in BBC and CNN interviews that you've changed your views, because 10 years ago you laughed, there was no global government, there was no secret room, there wasn't a plan. And then 3 or 4 years later, I'd see you say, no, there really is a Bilderberg group. They really do want a world government. But you can differ on what their plans are or argue about, are they really in control? Now they're openly announcing a global carbon tax, a world government. We're going to pay our taxes to a private bank of the world. They have the Framework Convention on Climate Change. They're saying Al Gore is a prophet and that his new movie is about how it's a global religion of the earth. And, I mean, John, a lot has changed. What's your view now on the New World Order? Does it still not exist?
Well, I mean, what you're saying now about kind of what stuff might have leaked out of, recent Bilderberg meetings, I don't know. I've not read the minutes of the last few years' meetings, so I can't comment on that. But the reason why I said that I felt that, their agenda was, to an extent, a creation of world government is because that's what one of the founding members of the Bilderberg group said to me on the record. It was Dennis Healy, Lord Healy, who was one of the, the first people to set up Bilderberg. And he said to say that we were striving for a world government is exaggerated but not wholly unfair. Those are his actual words. He said because basically, Bilderberg was set up post Second World War, and they saw that, that the last thing the world needed was a politician who was too much of an ideologue. They didn't want any more Hitlers, so they kind of figured a world government where politics wasn't really in the hands of politicians. It was much more about the flow of capital. That seemed to have been the reason why Bilderberg, as a kind of centrist globalist thing, was set up. So yeah, so that there we are not in disagreement either.
But John, the mainstream media still out of one side of their mouth says there's no such thing as a world government. And then out of the other side of their mouth, they say, yes, it's a great thing, and it's going to be non-democratic and authoritarian because we, the wise men, know best, i.e. Financial Times of London headline, and now for world government. I mean, here is the New York Times 2 weeks ago, Ban Ki-moon, and it says Ban Ki-moon, again, is the author of this, and he went on to say in the article that global government is what we need. He goes on in the article to say one world government is what we need, and that carbon taxes will be the funding mechanism for this. I mean, this is authoritarian. This is unelected. This system is not democratic, and you find out the very same wise men that created Hitler and created Mussolini are the very wise men that created Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein, or their sons did.
Well, my theory about Bilderberg is that their vision back in the early 1950s, post the Second World War, was in their minds quite idealistic. They thought that a safer way of running the world, having just lived through Mussolini and Hitler, a safer way would be to de-ideologue the politicians and to put power in the hands of business. Because businessmen only care about the flow of money. They don't care about politics and ideologies. But of course, you know, what the last 50 years has taught us is that CEOs can be just as corrupt as politicians, and frequently are. So, you know, that's my view on Bilderberg, is that it was an idealistic vision which, like all idealistic visions, went wrong.
Well, have you read where it's been declassified now that Hitler was on MI5 payroll and so was Mussolini?